Took a 2-week break because we were traveling a lot.
Yeah. It's probably the most we've ever traveled in a 2-month period.
Yeah,
It was pretty nuts.
We were gone just about every weekend for like 2 months straight. Just with like visiting friends in other places and having birthdays and trips and I don't know, just like it ended up being so much. So yeah, we were like, this is so much. So we were like, let's just like pause for a moment. We were like trying to figure out times to like squeeze the podcast in, and we just really didn't want to do that, you know, feel like we had to like squeeze it in. So I was like, let's just take a break. So
yeah, it happens.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not normal, but it's kind of worked out that way this summer.
Yeah.
I think we had like half those trips planned and the other half just kind of like popped up.
Yeah, exactly. But so we are back. Yay. And so we have mentioned in previous episodes, in a lot of episodes actually, in like our first season, we allude to this book that neither of us had read and only heard about. I didn't even know the name of it. I just knew there was a book that I had heard about like what it was like for like early humans essentially, and like what their sex life might be like. That was it. That was all I really knew. And we like talked about it a little bit in previous episodes, especially in the first season. And then a few months ago, I stumbled upon the book again. I was like, oh, right, that book. I've been wanting to read that. And now I know the name of it. It's Sex at Dawn. And so I finally was like, yes, I need to read this book because I've been circling around it and I'm finally there. So I found the book, I read it, and I was like, oh my God, this book is amazing. Mike, you need to read it. So then Mike started reading it, or rather listening to it, you know, as an audiobook, and he's almost done with it. And yeah, so we just wanted to chat about this book because we mention it in so many episodes, and like we talk about it with my parents a little bit in their episode. And so now we're like, okay, and we've even said like we should dedicate an entire episode to this book. And so here we are. We're doing it. So this is that episode dedicated.
At least one episode.
Yeah. It might end up being 2. We'll see.
Yeah. And the book covers so much. And
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it shocked me at how well written and how thoroughly researched. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, yeah, just the ideas they have, just like the theories they throw out there.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Mm-hmm. But it makes sense, too.
Yeah.
You know, they lay it out in such a easy to follow way. Mm-hmm. And they do a great job at showing like what the kind of traditional and like current like philosophy is behind evolution and how we came to be, and kind of more so what the reality is based on, you know, their accumulation of a whole bunch of research. Yeah. So I mean, it's been eye-opening for me, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's what we want to get into. So that's the topic for today. So before we get into the episode, we are trying this. It's called Limbo Series. It's this really cool red can for those of you who are watching. Yeah, and it's by McKellar. And it's a Flemish primitive ale with raspberry. And so the person at Soft Spirits, where I bought this, said it's kind of like a raspberry sour. A little bit. And so it's supposed to mimic like like an actual like beer. And I think it is. I think it's a beer that they took the alcohol out of. So they brewed it like a normal beer and then took the alcohol out. I think.
Well, there it is. Product of Belgium.
Because it does say on here non-alcoholic, but it's 0.3%. So kind of like a kombucha. Like a kombucha is 0.5% alcohol. So like it's technically not 0%, but it also like isn't anything you're like that's going to affect you. Like, you know, you can drink kombucha all day and you don't ever get buzzed because there's not enough alcohol in there. So this is kind of like the same thing. But it's actually even less than that. It's 0.3%. And kombuchas can be like, I think 0.5.
I think so.
I think. Anyway, so
Yeah, I'm not
that's,
sure about that one.
that's what we're trying. So let's
give it a go.
yeah, let's give it a shot. Ooh, oh shit.
Oh, yours is foaming. All right, no spill over though. I'm expecting
it's good.
sour,
Cheers.
sweet and sour. Cheers, Mimar.
Ooh, okay, so mine like totally foamed up. And so I just drank the foam. But the foam is pretty good.
Ooh, that's tasty. Yeah.
What do you think?
It's like 50-50 sweet sour. It's like a perfect balance between the two. Ooh.
Oh,
Definitely gives you
man.
that sour like twinge in the back of your cheeks.
This is so good. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I wouldn't even call this a beer though.
No, it does not taste like beer at all. It really just tastes like raspberry juice. No, I shouldn't say juice. Because it doesn't have that like juice flavor and quality to it. Wow, it is so raspberry and so it's tart but also sweet at the same time. So I love sours. When it comes to beer, it's really the only one I would ever choose. I mean, I would never choose beer, but if beer is the only option, then I always go for a sour. So I really like those sour flavors. The raspberry, it's so like true to the raspberry flavor. Mm-hmm. And it's that perfect combo of sour and sweet. Oh my gosh, I think I have a new favorite.
You think you're in love?
I might be. I think this is a new favorite.
Yeah. I think what's so good about it is like the raspberry flavor is so spot on. It doesn't taste artificial at all.
No, not at all.
It does have, I guess the one characteristic that reminds me of the beer is it does kind of have like the sour is like very sour, but it does have a similar like taste and feel to a sour beer.
Yeah, definitely.
But then it is on the more sweet side for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it has that like consistency of a beer, but like there's like the tiniest in the aftertaste, like beer-like quality to it, but it's so small.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know, like it's so faint.
Yeah.
That like, it's hard to really, for me, it's hard to really say like, oh yeah, this tastes like a beer. Not at all.
It's kind of like the best of like a juice and like a sour.
Yeah.
Because usually if you try to combine the two, it's like kind of comes out funky.
Yeah.
But this one's like, it's there.
Yeah, this is really, really good. Oh my gosh.
All right, so what are you going to give it?
Wow, I think I'm going to give this a 9.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just so good, and I love sour flavors. I love sour flavors, and this is just spot on. I could drink this all day. All day.
I think it says there's 5 grams of sugar.
Whatever.
Per serving, so I mean
That's minimal.
Yeah, I mean that's not that much. For how much flavor it has, that's really good.
Yeah. Oh man.
Per 100 milliliters. So.
All right, I give it a 9. This is definitely. This is my favorite. I still really like the strawberry recess. We like always mention that one in like every episode, but it's like it's on par for sure. The strawberry recess and this, I like them both. They're just so different because this is sour and the strawberry recess is like sweet, fruity, florally. So they're just like totally opposite flavor profiles. But those are the two different flavor profiles that I love the most. So yeah, this is a 9. That's a 9.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a 9 too. This one does have more sugar though. It has 15 grams of sugar for the whole can.
Whatever.
Cause that's like, well, I mean that's a small factor, but it's still a factor. Cause I think the recesses had minimal sugar, if any.
Oh yeah, I don't know if they had any sugar.
So like for how little sugar they had to the flavor, like the recess was really tasty.
Yeah.
But in terms of like flavor, I think this one has by far the most flavor.
Oh yeah, this is, oh my god, so good.
Because it has all that sugar though.
Yeah,
It's not a crazy amount. It's like what, half or a third that of a soda.
Yeah.
So it's not terrible. But I think as a beer substitute or like a mixed drink substitute, it's really good because it's not super unhealthy, but it's got enough flavor to just like give you a little boost.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll give it a 9.
Oh wow, this was such a surprise. I'm so pleasantly surprised by this. Wow. All right, 9s all around.
Yeah. Got to make up for that lack of alcohol somewhere. And it does.
All right, let's get into the episode.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so Sex at Dawn. Like, where do we even begin with this book?
Yeah, it is tough. There's so much.
I know, there's so much. But the tagline is how we mate, why we stray, and what it means for modern relationships. And I love that because it's so thorough. The book starts out looking at what's called like the standard narrative. And that's basically the like narrative we have all been fed for years and years and years, of like, men and women need to be in monogamous relationships together and they need to get married and have children and have their nuclear family, and that's that. And that like men just always want to have sex. Women never really want to have sex, but they need men to like pay for things in their lives and take care of their children, and that's how we like come together, and that's the way the relationship dynamic works. And that like we never want the same thing, but yet here we are in relationship all the time.
Yeah.
That's like basically the standard narrative.
It's very black and white. It's like a never-ending struggle where there's like no, it's pretty bleak where there's like no happiness, like zero-sum game.
Yeah.
If I take something from you, like you lose it, and there's like, it's very black and white.
Yeah.
And like very logical in a way, but also like limiting at the same time.
Yeah, very limiting.
I guess logical for like the beliefs at the time, but it's like within a very limited framework.
Yeah. So like the standard narrative came about in like the 1800s.
I can't remember the exact
timing,
probably because it was with Darwin and Hobbes. I mean, I think it's been developed since like probably like the 1600s. It's just kind of been like developing over time, but I think it like really
became like solidified
came to be what we know now, like
as a standard narrative. In the 1800s.
1800s.
Yeah, and so like
the 1900s.
So it's really looking at all of that research, and like the 1800s, that like Victorian era was a really like it was a very bleak time, and it also was like a time when religion was, I guess, like extra, what am I trying to say? When religion was really like at its prime in people's lives, and also like Puritanism, and and so that sort of narrative of women need to be super pure, and women don't have any sexual desires at all, and like so it's like that was just like the idea. And so then, and the church was like really strong and also like reaffirming those ideas. Like it was the church that was like basically putting those ideas out there that like, sex is bad, you can't have sex outside of marriage, you should only be having sex to reproduce, not for pleasure. Pleasure is bad, all that kind of stuff. And so when like Hobbes and Darwin were like doing all of this research, like basically we find out that like through their research, they probably inferred that monogamy was actually not exactly the best for humans, but because of the time period that they were living in, it definitely would not have been okay to say that. You know, this was still a time period where people were getting, murdered by the church, or not murdered, they were like put on trial by the church for questioning church values and questioning the church. Like people could still like die for that. And so, and then also to say that like women actually had desires, that was also like a big, to say something like that would have been so scandalous. And so it's like some of this stuff, it's like some of the things they wrote, it was like very clear that they saw non-monogamy was prevalent, but then like 2 sentences later would be like, oh, but non-monogamy is like not a thing at all, because like why?
Yeah, they would try to rationalize it
Yeah.
to fit the narrative and like the religious morals that they had.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean the authors do a great job. I mean they describe it as Flinstonization.
Yeah, and I love that.
Projecting your modern beliefs and ideals into the past.
Yeah.
And saying that, oh, like these prehistoric people had to have lived this way because this is, how we live today and like how we think it is.
Yeah.
And so they were like kind of doing the same thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, so it was interesting because there are some quotes in the book and there are some, recognitions by Hobbes and Darwin, and there's many other researchers too. Those are just the two big ones I remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean they pretty much say like, yeah, our findings show that like non-monogamy exists, but like they just didn't want to flat out say it. So they like allude to it.
Yeah.
But out of just like, probably fear for their safety and just to like fit the, the standard at the time.
Yeah.
They didn't.
And then
say
they would
that.
say something like,
They try to explain it away with some other reasoning.
Be like, oh, but that's just like a fluke, or that's just like a small percentage, or that could never actually work. You know, and that's it. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, yeah, I mean, essentially they said that, like, as you were saying, that, like, men are only, like, or men can only provide, like, resources to women, right? So, like, women's, like, main drive is to, like, secure resources from a man.
To secure a man with the resources to provide for her and her children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To provide physical safety and then, like, physical resources for her and her children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, like, that's, like, okay, that's, like, the woman's sole drive, essentially.
Yeah.
And then the man's sole drive is just to
spread his seed.
Spread his seed, and yeah. And and then a big one was paternity certainty. That's one they push a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like a man would not want like another man sleeping with his woman because he wants his genes to be passed down through his lineage.
Yeah, and why would he want to waste his resources on children that were not his?
Yeah.
Or that he wasn't certain were his.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a big idea behind the standard narrative was paternity certainty.
Yeah.
Like anything that like men wouldn't act outside of anything that would like, deter them or prevent them from having that sort of certainty. Mm-hmm. And so that's why like sharing or like having more than one man like have sex with a woman.
Yeah.
Was like so like out of the question.
Yeah.
In their minds.
Yeah.
And so it's just.
Yeah, so the book like really digs deep into the standard narrative, and how it really, when you really look at it, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. And that the people who created the standard narrative probably also knew that it didn't make sense, but they couldn't say that. And so they just like omitted the things or explained away the things that didn't quite make sense. So that way the standard narrative could fit the standard narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of talk about, different ape species, right? Because if you believe in evolution and humans have evolved from apes, not from monkeys.
Yeah.
There's a branch off.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long ago, millions of years ago, between the apes and the monkeys.
Let me see if I can find it.
And so we're from the, we're from the ape side. The monkeys are their own thing. And so on the ape side, there's the gorillas, the gibbon, the chimpanzee, and the
bonobo.
The bonobo. So I was blanking on that name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think those are the main ones. There might be others too, but those are the main ones they talk about in the book. And so it's interesting because each ape species really does have their own social structure.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Sorry, I pulled up. There's like this wonderful graph in the book, and so I just like pulled it up so we could see. Yeah. So all of the apes, there's like the macaw, the baboon, the gibbon, orangutan, gorilla, human, then bonobo, and chimp. So those are all the different apes.
I think these are the monkeys, right? Is that the monkey side?
Oh, yeah, my bad. The macaw and the baboon are monkeys. But yeah, the gibbon, orangutan, gorilla, human, bonobo, and chimp. So 6 different apes.
Yeah, each with very, very different social structures.
Uh-huh.
And so they don't really go too much into the orangutan, but the gibbon is actually the only purely monogamous ape.
Yes. So there's, what did I say, 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, there's 6 different apes. And the gibbon is the only one that is monogamous. And we're not counting humans because, as we've seen, we like to pretend we're monogamous, but clearly our actions say otherwise.
Yeah. But I mean, there's also examples amongst many humans that don't practice monogamy.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that. But, so, there's only 1 out of 6 of the different kinds of apes that are truly monogamous.
Yeah.
1 out of 6. And so they talk a lot about the bonobos, chimps, and gorillas, because those are the ones that are closest to humans. So like when we're looking at the graph, gorillas came about before humans. Then humans came about from like the ape species, and then the bonobo, and then the chimp. So humans became like a species before the bonobo and the chimp. But gorillas came before humans. So that's kind of like what we're looking at, but they're all like relatively close together. And so that's who they compare us to a lot. And so the book compares us the most to bonobos because the bonobos are the closest relation to humans, and their social structure is closest to us. The way they mate, everything about the bonobo is so close to the humans and almost mimics humans exactly. And so that's a big thing that they use. And so a lot of the research that was done before this book, and like when like research like this, like looking into, okay, well, have humans always been monogamous or have they not, like, and looking into like the psychology around sexuality and like looking back at history to sort of see the patterns and stuff, that started becoming really popular in like, I don't know, the 50s. And so a lot of the research that was done initially was done with chimpanzees. Mm-hmm. And like, we didn't even know that bonobos existed for like a really long time. So all of this research was initially done with chimpanzees, and it's very different than, the chimps are very different than humans. But they were thought to be our closest relative. And so they were like, but then once the bonobos were discovered, they found out that, wow, like our DNA is more closely related to the bonobo, and actually our social structures, the way we interact, all of that is more closely related to the bonobo, but nobody was doing that research.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the big theory about like how humans have evolved to how we are now. Like how our brains are so much more, you know, dense and bigger than other monkeys. It was from like this elaborate social structure from, I guess, from the bonobo, or just from, you know, probably from the bonobo species, or just prior species, actually, well, because humans came before
Yeah.
bonobo. So yeah, just like the elaborate, like intricate social
Stru-
groups that we had, that over time, like the brain evolved to be able to just comprehend and like deal with,
Yeah.
you know, all this stimulation going on around it.
Yeah, they make a really interesting point about vampire bats. How vampire bats will go out and feed and come back, and if there's another bat that like wasn't able to like feed or excuse me, or get enough blood, a bat that did feed enough will like regurgitate some of that blood for the other bat who didn't get enough, right? It's like the way to help everybody, so that way the whole species can like continue to survive or whatever. But they
Yeah.
will remember.
Yeah.
So the bat that like didn't have a great feed that night will remember that, like, oh, Mike bat over here fed me. So when the tables have turned and I've fed really well, I will regurgitate some for Mike because he was so kind to me. And they will remember stuff like that. And they will remember who wouldn't regurgitate and help them. And so that has caused vampire bats' brains to be like the biggest of like most of the bats, because they have to remember that's a very important like social thing that they need to remember. And so it's like the same concept, but like on a much, much bigger scale, obviously.
Yeah.
For humans.
And much more complex.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's not necessarily like altruistic, right? Like they're not like, oh, like I'm doing this for the greater good. It's like,
Yeah.
it's purely a survival instinct, because it's like, oh, if I can like diversify my resources and like share, then I'm more likely to, you know, have resources given to me in the future.
Yes. So that way I can survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a more, I guess, it's a more social and is more. It's like an insurance policy or a safety net that's developed, because it's, you know, there was so much variability in like being able to find food.
Yeah. And so along that same concept, they look at the social structures of bonobos and of early humans. And it's like it's hunter-gatherers, right? We know that early humans were hunter-gatherers. They didn't live in like one place. They just moved about wherever they wanted, wherever there was lots of food. Or just wherever they felt like, really. And so they talk about that, and how when you're in a hunter-gatherer society, you have to share. You have to share your resources for that same reason. Because it's, one, when you share, other people are going to share with you, but also that's how you keep like your small tribe or group or whatever like safe and well cared for. So that way you can continue to survive together, because you need each other. Right? And so when everything is being shared, right? Food, water, shelter, everything is being shared, it creates that more, it's more about like the community and the we, rather than, oh, well, what do I need? What's good for just me? And when you're looking at that as like the whole is more important than the one, and you're doing that with everything, then why wouldn't sexuality be the same? You know, if you're hunter-gatherer, like, why, and share absolutely everything and care about your community so much, why would you then say, oh, but I can only have sex with this one person, and that's it? And that's like one of the big points that the book makes.
Yeah. And then also the researchers have looked at more modern hunter-gatherer tribes that still exist today.
Yes.
And essentially like those same ideas still exist. The idea that, or of being individualistic or hoarding, or just taking, more for yourself.
Yeah.
And not sharing as much. Like, all of those ideas are just completely, like, shunned. And
Yeah, that's like
that's
the
like
most
biggest
shameful
sin.
thing.
Yeah.
That you can do is hoard.
Yeah. Because, yeah, it's not about you. It's about the group as a whole.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah. And then I guess the research they did, it showed that, like, the contemporary, like, hunter-gatherer tribes today were very similar to, like, our prehistoric human ancestors.
Yeah, because
And they essentially shared everything. It was all about, like, diversification and well, yeah, which allows you to, like, just be a lot, like, safer, and, like, it also naturally allows, like, the stronger things to survive when you're sharing amongst the whole group.
Yeah.
So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. So one of the stories that I found so interesting and so cool was they talk about this civilization in China that basically hadn't really been touched by modern society, right? So they have been operating like the way they've been operating for thousands of years without ever really being informed by any modern society. So they looked at this community, and it's like the way it's structured was so beautiful to me. I just was like, wow. I was like, I want to go live there. I want to live there. But basically it's like their homes are like these big circles, and in the middle is like the kitchen, the living room, the place where everybody gathers. And then around that is the rooms for the women. And it's like there's a door on either side of the room. There's a door into like the communal area, and then a door to just the rest of the village. And at night, the women go into their rooms, they lock the door to the communal area, and they are encouraged to sleep with anybody they want, with anybody in the village, every single night. And they're encouraged to sleep with somebody different every single night. And it is up to the women. The women get to choose who they want to spend the night with. Now, they don't have to have sex necessarily, but they get to choose who they want to spend the night with. And the men just are like, yeah, sure. Like, oh, you're choosing me tonight? Great, let's go. And like, and because that is the structure, then when these women get pregnant, it's the whole family raises the child. And it's more that, and her brothers raise that child like the child is their own. So it's like the brothers, and then help raise. And then these children also wander around throughout the community just all the time. And they are welcome into any household. If a child walks in that is like from, your friend down the street, it doesn't matter. Like, because all of the children are everyone's children, right? Because we don't know who the dad is. Does it matter? No. It's a child. We're going to love this child anyway. And it solidifies the community in such a beautiful way. I was just like mind blown. I was like, wow, can you imagine if right now we lived in a way where like, it doesn't matter like, oh, like this is my child, that's your child, and we only take care of like the ones who are related to us. Can you imagine if it just like, if we lived in like smaller settings, and then it didn't matter whose child was whose, and you love on everyone, and then these children grow up with such a sense of belonging. They never feel isolated. They never feel unloved because they've had an entire village loving them and supporting them. Look at children now who come from like broken households where they're bouncing around. They feel so isolated. They feel so unloved. Like the nuclear family is not working in so many reasons. And like monogamy creating clearly is not working because we know all of these marriages, 50% of them end in divorce. And so it's just like crazy to me to like look at these societies and see how bonded they are and how what such like a beautiful upbringing all of these children have. And then for us to look at them and be like, oh, that's weird. Look at how like immoral they are, sleeping around, all that kind of stuff. Like it's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big difference, of course, is like the scale of it, right? Like, you
Yeah.
can't do this on like a grand scale.
Yeah.
You know, there would be too much like confusion and chaos, I think, right?
Well, yeah, and
So I
but
think,
that's also something they bring up in the book.
yeah,
Is that like humans aren't really like we reach capacity at a community of about 150.
yeah, it's a number I remember.
Yeah, 150 people in a community is about when like our brains can like still remember everybody, still kind of know, but then like and maintain like decent relationships, but after that, it's too big.
Yeah. So I think communities and like neighborhoods kind of naturally do that, right? Because that's like, we still have the nuclear family, but like those families within like who live close to each other and within the neighborhood typically form, closer like social bonds and connections.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I remember growing up and like I would just pop into a friend's house.
Oh, totally.
I wasn't like I had to knock and like ring the doorbell, of course. And like sometimes I could just walk in. It depends on how close the friend was.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I mean, I had
So
that too.
it's not like the society we have now it's similar
Yeah.
in certain regards, but yeah, it's not so open and so like free flowing
Yeah.
as that society. But yeah, I mean that's to me, I don't know, to me I guess what I'm trying to get is like I think just kind of maintaining that like a hybrid system of like the nuclear family, but just with like smaller, more like open communities
Yeah.
is like, I think that's the way to do it. And I think a lot of people in general do it like that.
Yeah. And like for me, it's like the idea of like having a commune or like a compound is not so crazy, right? Like think about like if there was like a cul-de-sac and like everybody bought a house on that cul-de-sac and then you've created like your own mini community in this cul-de-sac and then it's like and all resources are shared. Food, water, children can go to any house and get anything they need, money, right? Everything is sort of like used to help. So it's like, oh, Susie down the street, got like laid off or whatever. We're gonna help take care of her child and give them money. And because eventually something is gonna happen to us and she's gonna do the same for us. Like that idea has always made so much sense to me. And that like everybody has their own thing to contribute and so why not? And like,
Yeah.
so that idea of like living more as like a community together instead of like separate families and like, oh, you're going through a hard time. Oh, so sorry. Good luck with that. Like, that doesn't help anybody,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Or you're saying like, oh, like wish you the best, or like sending some money.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's better than nothing. But I guess
Yeah.
for me, I think the big divide is like with relationships though.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can have these small like neighborhood communities and like, yeah, the kids play together and like the families meet, but like still you still have like the monogamous divide between like
Yeah.
all the couples.
But, so you haven't gotten to this part in the book yet because you haven't finished it. But at the very end of the book, they talk about how swinging became a thing. All right. We are going to stop right there. I know we're right in the middle of the conversation, but this conversation ends up going on for quite a while. So we have split it up into 3 different episodes. So this is just the beginning. We have so much more to get into, and I promise we tie it all together at the end. So if you've been finding this fascinating, then you definitely need to check out the book Sex at Dawn. The link is in the show notes. So if you're like, yeah, I need this book, we've got the link for you. And yeah, like as usual, if you have been enjoying this podcast, then please, rate it, subscribe to it, give us a 5-star rating, whatever feels good to you. And as usual, you can find me on Instagram. And one-on-one sessions are still available if you are like, okay, how do I do this whole polyamory thing? How do I talk to my partner and open up my relationship? How does some of this stuff work? If you have questions, I probably have answers. So anyway, thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and stay tuned because we've got parts 2 and 3 coming up next week and the week after.